Emotional support, Chad. I love that. Okay. I'm going to remind me to tell you a drug dealer story in a little bit. Okay. Remind me to tell you a drug dealer story. Whatever anybody thinks about drug dealers or whatever is probably right. But my drug dealer was really funny, super nice. And like, I just enjoyed hanging around them, whether drugs were involved or not, because they're funny. It's a question about the ethnicity of my drug dealer, which I will not comment on specifically, but let me say this, like, I wasn't going to the guy who's on the street corner or handing out like bags at the club or whatever. Like, the person I went to was like a regional manager, so to speak, right? They got materials in and typically, sent out larger amounts to other people type thing. So I, tended to get very, very fresh, very clean stuff, which I then still subsequently tested. Junie Bud, how does one approach the dude on the corner and say, I want to see your boss? Never spoke to the dude on the corner. That was never a thing. Literally just, you meet people, and then when they find out you're into something or interested in something, you find out your connections have connections, and that's that. It's not that complicated. Yeah. We don't need to get too much into this because it's not really anybody's business. It was never part of any court stuff that I was involved in, and that's for the better. Oh, Mongoose Dog is in here again. He's very, very happy to speculate on things that he doesn't really know about, but that's fine. It says your local Home Depot is a supplier. Yes, actually, of meth. If you want to go to the local Home Depot, you can probably find meth. I found out in recovery that there are meth dealers all over this fucking town, like in pretty much every major retail store. I don't know any of them. I never did meth. It's gross and terrifying. You did meth for a short time when you were younger, but I love my teeth more. That's one of the things, man. Meth has so many like severe immediate physical or not immediate, but like physical consequences with chronic use, loss of bone density, and really the degrading teeth, and meth mouth in general is an obvious one. And that's one that I don't get around. I met plenty of guys that had meth problems while I was doing recovery. Most of the people around here are on meth. Most of the drug use around here is meth. I should probably say it that way. That's better. So you've got a big meth problem, because it's a relatively not rich county that I live in. The county is it's less than 50,000 people total, and the median income is like 42 grand a year. There's not a bunch of spare money to throw around on shit like cocaine, I guess. Although I don't know how much meth costs by volume. I've never even seen meth in person, thank God. So I don't know comparatively. To me, cocaine was less expensive than I expected based on what people said. They're like, oh, it's so expensive or whatever. And it's always portrayed as very expensive. And all the county workers that were involved, like they basically said, coke's too expensive to get out here. Now, I have no idea what the comparative cost is per, like, you can't really just compare volume directly because drugs don't work that way, but like cost per high, maybe, I don't know. David Odell says, no, it's boring ass rural Minnesota. It's the cheap highs that will be sought. Well, I mean, it's the cheap highs that people can afford is one of the big things. But yeah, don't do meth. It's disgusting. Judge Maddie says Provigil is just less potent meth. No, you're thinking of Adderall. Adderall is an amphetamine. Meth is also an amphetamine, but they are chemically very distinct. Adderall doesn't produce the meth mouth, those types of side effects that meth does. That's a pretty big distinction between them. But they are both amphetamines. But and there are other methyl based drugs like Ritalin, right? Is methylphenidate, for example, and that's not an amphetamine because it's not methamphetamine, but it's similar in part of its chemical structure. But here's the thing: whoever said that they never had it was Nomadic Washington. I never had fun on coke. I don't know. It really depends. If you have ADHD or other neurological conditions, they really impact how some of these things work. So, it's it's kind of a mixed bag on how they're going to hit. The best bet is not to do them. There are other ways to do to get sort of an analogous experience. Drugs are a shortcut to those things, and those shortcuts come with costs, and they can really fuck up your brain chemistry long term. So, don't do them. Again, that's what I have to say. Diamonds and Henna says, I thought Provigil was rich man's Adderall. No, Provigil is a completely different thing. It is not a stimulant in the same way that Ritalin or Adderall are. Provigil works on, I don't remember exactly how to explain it, but it works on slightly different neurotransmitters. I want to say it's a dopamine inhibitor, reuptake inhibitor. Was that Provigil I was thinking of? It's been a minute since I've read about how it works, but Provigil is a pretty amazing. It's a pretty amazing compound, really, when you think about it. It was developed by the government. It was developed for bomber pilots and espionage agents, so they could be very effective while staying up for many, many hours in a row. I think they came to the conclusion that with a regimen of 600 milligrams of Adderall, or not Adderall, Provigil per day, bomber pilots could fly 66 hours and still be something like 85 to 90% effective, which is really crazy when you think about it. The Roz, it's Provigil, Provigil. The generic non-brand name version of it is modafinil. Either one of those, like, you can look it up and find the neurological effect that it has, but it's just different. It's different than coke, and it's different than Ritalin, and it's different than meth, and it's different than Adderall as well, in that Provigil doesn't spike you up like those things. Those things hit much faster. Provigil is a much longer effect. It's much more subtle, and it's much more gradual, like going up a hill and then down a hill slowly, as opposed to going upstairs and then falling off a cliff like some of those other things. So, it lasts like 12 hours, and the effect when you need it, and this is one of the things that's hard for me to explain to people. In fact, I was famously trying to talk to someone about like how these things work on different brains, and they twisted that story into something that it was not. But for example, like if you have ADHD and you're taking a stimulant, the problem with ADHD is you get overwhelmed by sensory input or responses to stimuli, and your brain can't keep up with what's going on. So the stimulant actually stimulates your brain function, allowing it to kind of wind up. It's like revving up the engine, so to speak. And then you're able to keep up with what's going on around you. You're able to keep up with those sensory inputs that are happening. And that is why someone with ADHD, when they are on a stimulant, doesn't have, like, they don't get crazy jittery. They don't get like super manic. They don't get those experiences because it's just bringing them up to kind of the normal baseline level where other people are operating. And the same thing with having narcolepsy and something like Provigil. Like, if I'm not on or on Provigil, I'm tired all the time. I'm tired when I go to bed. I'm tired when I wake up. I'm tired constantly throughout the day. And once Provigil kicks in, I'm awake normally. Like it's your normal experience. It brings your brain up to par, I guess is the way to put it. And so like people who are not who don't have the underlying neurological condition like ADHD or narcolepsy, and there's some other ones, sometimes anxiety, for example. But people who don't have those underlying conditions, the treatment is not necessary. Therefore, it's kicking you into overdrive as opposed to making up for a deficiency. 7 stars says you probably screwed your health with bad eating and alcohol and have low as a fuck test. Actually, I don't. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I don't, but that's okay. I expected to have a bunch of negative uh, physical outcomes, and the worst I ended up having was, which was really bad, was a vitamin B12 deficiency. And it's hard to determine where exactly that came from. That could have come from a lot of things. Uh, my my diet following the arrest was really bad because I was really depressed. Like so I wasn't eating. It could have come from that. It could some of the chemicals like coke and ketamine with prolonged use can have an impact on B12 absorption and stuff like that. So it could have been that too. I don't know. It's impossible to know for sure what the cause was, but I certainly had behaviors that contributed to that, right? And it happened. That was the nastiest thing. Everything else, if you ignoring the B12 deficiency, every other number on all of my blood tests for the past several years and has been improving. And now every single thing is in the normal zone, which is weird. But even when I was actively using, the only thing I had outside of normal was my triglycerides were slightly elevated. I think that the high is like 150 and mine was like it was 160 right before I got arrested. And now it's down in the normal range. But I'd been working on my triglycerides for a little while because it was up near 200 a couple years back when I was 200 pounds. So like, but I expected to have kidney or liver issues or whatever due to the prolonged alcohol and drug use. And fortunately I didn't. I don't know. It's not like I did anything special to do it. And like I said, I chalk it up to literally to good fortune. That's about it. B12 deficiency from lack of red meat. Could be. Like I said, the post arrest, I was in a really bad mental place for a long time. There's a whole lot going on. It was very tumultuous, and there's nothing you could do to make it happen faster. And for me, that's the hardest part. Like, I need to know what's going on, where I'm going, and I need things to move in that direction. So for me, it was devastating to not know what was happening next, not have a schedule, or like, sorry, not a schedule, but like an expectation, and to just be waiting on everybody else in the world. And they tell you, you need to do this and this and this. You go, all right, you go get that done in less than a week or whatever. And then you're like, okay, well, what next? Can we move this on? And they're like, well, eventually. Like, well, how about like now? Like, how about we move it on now? And they just make you wait. So that was a really, really tough time for me. And I spent a lot of days like not eating and just kind of sulking. It was really difficult. I'm glad those days are pretty much behind me. So it's a blessing your kidneys weren't severely damaged. Yes, it is. I think it also, a lot of this, I think, how do I word this? I think there's a misconception because a lot of my story is hyperbolized, fantasized, or romanticized in some way or another. And so like the reality was I did a lot of substances that I should not do. I did a lot of them. All right. I'm not trying to undersell that, but I did a lot. But there's a whole lot of people who do a whole lot more and for a whole lot longer. But I think because of the shock of it, the amount I was arrested with and all that stuff, people have this idea that it was that a lot means like a lot, a lot, a lot. And it's not that. I was around many people who did way more than me with frequency. And that's okay. Like it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean my actions were good or justified. They're not. But like also people build up a mental picture of what things were like. And let me just tell you pretty frankly, up until the day of the arrest, my life looked normal to basically everybody. It wasn't normal, but it looked normal. And when people saw the situation, they read these reports, and things are like passed through a game of telephone. They came to conclusions about what must be happening and what must have been going on, because they didn't live in that world. But if you came into our house pretty much any day, what you would see is a family of people getting the kids, to school. Well, one of them went to school full time. The others are still homeschooled. So getting the one to school, getting the others, homeschooling, ramped up, making food, running errands, doing all the shit that you just normally do. And people get this idea that this is crazy, like drug fueled orgy 24 hours a day. It's like, no, in fact, no, that's not what was going on. And that's why no one knew. That's why it was such a surprise to a lot of people. I mean, people who looked at me could tell something was amiss. Like, obviously, I go back, I looked at some of those streams and I was like, oh my God, I look like Ariana Grande. Mickle Wells says everyone knew. No. Like I'm talking about the people in our lives. If you watch me every night, yeah, you would see like what was going on with me. But with drug use, you always have an explanation for everything that's happening. So it's like I said, I'm not saying that I didn't do a lot of things, but I think that there's a conception out there that people have that I did a lot more, which is crazy to me because I'm like, who has time? Who has time to do all these drugs? I don't know how I did all the stuff that I did. But yeah, so the health thing is kind of a surprise, kind of not. But it on one hand, though, it really does make you kind of question the narrative around some of the stated health impacts that are out there. And if you look at it, something like reefer madness and the propaganda around marijuana both ways, some people think marijuana, either CBD or THC or a combination thereof, is like this miracle cure for everything. And other people think it will like destroy your brain and body and stuff like that. And the truth is somewhere in the middle, which is it pretty much won't do much of anything to you either way, outside of when you get standard deviations away from normal use, right? Like the further away you go from normal use, the bigger impact it's going to have. But you have to go pretty far. Mickle Wells says, I think you did more than enough, actually. How much did I do? You know a lot about it. Go ahead. Tell me. See, it's amazing because like you don't know. You don't have any idea. I actually do have an idea. I was there. I know the test results. I know all that stuff. But you don't know. Like, so your point is that I did more than enough because enough is zero. That's a reasonable position to take, but like you don't have any idea in the factual aspect of it. So in some level, you have to fill in those gaps on your own, which you can only do in a couple ways. One way is you've experienced it, so you try and make an analog in your life to what you saw in me, or you haven't experienced it all, and you just have to go based off of like third hand stories or whatever that other people have, and kind of like ham fist those in and try and make a mosaic of what my life must have looked like. And I can guarantee you'd be incorrect. Did I get cravings, or did you, and how did you fight them? I didn't really get any cravings at all. There are elements there are elements of them that I, miss because they trick your brain into making everything feel great. So like that's you kind of go, man, that was kind of fun or whatever. Like that was enjoyable because of course it is. That's the whole point. But that said, I haven't gone, man, I really want some. Like I've never wanted any Coke or alcohol. Like that's not like the closest I've come to that is just like after a stressful day, wanting to sit down with a glass of whiskey. Like not to get drunk or anything, just wanting to sit down with a glass of whiskey. And you go, fuck, I can't do that. Okay. All right. And then you get over it really quickly. Or well, I do. Not everybody has the same experience like that. A lot of people really struggle. I didn't struggle with that side of it. I struggled with the other, with other things that were associated with my time, we'll say, to put it as politely and discreetly as possible. You had seizures if you didn't drink, it was bad. Yeah, like, and when I talked to my drug counselor and my doctor, and they're like, how are your symptoms? I'm like, I don't have any. Like, it's weird. Expected, I expected more. I think the biggest thing was I had disruptions in my already screwed up sleep schedule. And there was a little time where it was really hard to fall asleep. But other than that, like I didn't have the major things that you get. You get a lot of shakiness, and you can have seizures, and you can get very feverish and stuff. I didn't really run into that. And again, there's nothing special about me. I didn't do anything special. I count it mostly as just I was fortunate. So you miss and crave cigarettes more than you ever crave or miss other drugs and alcohol. Yeah, and nicotine is like a profoundly addictive substance. And it's funny because nicotine, here's how you know how addictive nicotine is, all right? This should tell you everything about it, at least in Minnesota. So as part of my probation, and anytime you have a felony substance related crime, your probation period includes a term that says you will not own or possess or use any mood altering substances without a prescription, including alcohol, right? So that's why I can't use alcohol, is because it's a mood altering substance. Well, there are tons of mood altering substances that are perfectly acceptable to use, like caffeine, for example, which is obviously a mood altering substance. You can tell a caffeine addict because they can't wake up in the morning and do their day without having coffee, or they're insufferable to be around. So you can't, you can have caffeine. That's fine. That's how you know caffeine is addictive. Same with sugar. Sugar is very much a mood dysregulator in multiple ways. But sugar is perfectly acceptable, but people can't get away from sugar. They can't get away from caffeine. And the other thing that you can have, even though it's, nicotine is technically a mood altering substance in the same way, but nicotine is allowed completely. So it doesn't make any sense. Doesn't, to me, like that, whatever. But that's how you know something is truly fucking addictive. The 7 Star says, I don't even miss Nick vapes. I've tried to get hooked on nicotine vapes for a while, and it never ends up working out. Like I enjoy them. Like I enjoy the taste or whatever. I don't get I don't get like a big reaction from them. I don't feel anything. I noticed that the stimulant effect in them is very, very mild. I know, like if I'm tired and I'm driving somewhere and I have a nicotine vape, I'll stay awake pretty much indefinitely. So that, like I know that it does something, but it's not perceivable to me. So you're weak, Nick, a loser. You're on your way to becoming a supervillain with a life of villainy, super science, and world domination. Now a man seeking redemption and recovery. Sick. Uh, yeah. I mean, I guess the, there's always an issue when your morality conflicts with, the prevailing morality. And, like, I don't have a moral issue with drugs. I really think that, criminalizing them is in a lot of ways, I think it's evil. And I didn't even do drugs till I was 40, so I've had this position for a very long time, though. I think we should be in charge of what we put into our bodies. I don't understand why the government thinks that we can't make an educated decision on what that is. But hey, they do though. Like that's the reality. Yeah, and when your moral opposition to something doesn't exist, but society's does, like you, what do? You either have to advocate for change, or you have to move away, or you have to abstain. That's how it goes. Soviet Skunk says, "Have you been around real drug users? Nick is pretty mellow." Yeah, again, I think a lot of it was hyped, so to speak, and it's because a big part of that is my fault. A big part of that is my fault because my behavior. So I've talked about this in different contexts, but when you watch a streamer, you're only watching you have a peep into a porthole of a submarine or a ship or whatever. You can see what you see through the lens of the show, and then any very small other things that may come out, live appearances, social media, etc. But you have a limited view of what's going on. That works in a couple different ways, but in the ways of something like drug use or alcohol use, um, it it does create a different impression because if you see someone and they're always high when you see them, for example, you'll assume that they're always high, and that's not like. I mean, I guess for someone out there that might be true, but that gives you a false impression of like the rest of the life that's going on. And I did that. Like there was a point where I was high on almost every show. And so people saw that and they saw my behavior like becoming more erratic and things kind of collapsing. So of course. So that creates an impression that something is going on, that's constant. The hard thing to remember is that while this isn't, I've said before, like you can't put on a mask for entire live streams. I can't. Um, Eventually, it'll slip, etc. And so it's easier to try and have as little like masking as possible. But it is still a show, and it's not necessarily performative, but you do a lot of things because of the show. Like I primarily drank on the show and not so much outside of it unless I was at an event or something like that where everybody's drinking, there's an open bar charity or something. But most of my drinking was on the show. And so the reason I did was because it was part of the show, like from the jump. But the premise of the channel at first was to read stupid lawsuit and drink whiskey while making fun of it. So whiskey was a part of the show in and of itself for me. Um, that said, and I enjoy whiskey, but it wasn't part of life as much as it probably seemed to be. And the same thing, with in a different way with the drug use, like as things were collapsing and you're trying to hold on to like various parts of what's going on. One of the big ones is your employment. And frankly, there are a lot of times where I felt like demotivated or sad or apprehensive or anxious about doing a show. And so it's like, oh, I'll do a little bit of this and that'll help. And it did. It didn't also, it didn't actually help. But in the present, it felt to me like it was helping because it would help you get over the hump of the anxiety or the doubt or whatever that was preventing you from doing the thing you were going to do or needed to do or whatever. It helped you get through the task. But I wasn't performing the task well under those circumstances. But, that led to like because of the show or not because of the show, but in relation to the show, a more consistent experience of that going on. So, like I said, I'm responsible for all of the perception, but there are other factors that contribute to how it is, and that's one of them. Is the kind of the porthole theory of parasocialism. I think is maybe the best way to put that. The 7-star, I am absolutely. So we did this to him. Shame on us. I think you're joking, but I'm not. No, no, no. It's not the audience's fault at all. To be very clear, it's not that. That's not the issue. It's how I set it up. It's the premises that I set, the routines that I set. It's all on me. But it's how I approached and framed the show, and then a refusal to let that go or change. Right? Like, that's not anyone else's fault. Success in the 80s says, wouldn't being fat and using coke make your heart explode? I have no idea how these things work. So coke does two things. It increases blood pressure due to vasoconstriction. So there's that. If you combine coke with certain other things, you can end up with a massive decrease in blood pressure. Very like coke and Viagra. Not great. Not great. And that can be very dangerous. The main danger of cocaine, you can overdose on it. It takes a lot to do so. The main danger is that cocaine takes away the negative side effects of alcohol. And so you drink a lot. You drink a shitload of alcohol. You don't feel the effects the same way. So, like you get the euphoria and like the social lubrication, those things, but you don't have the as much brain fog. You don't have the nausea. You don't have the headaches. And so that's a big risk. And that's where a lot of people run into trouble is they drink too much while on cocaine. The other one is dehydration. With any stimulant, you run into dehydration issues. Soviet says, come on, sometimes you got to add some Viagra in. Horrible for the heart. I'll say it one time. Mixing Molly, Coke, and Viagra is a really, really, really bad idea, and it might kill you. But you won't mind. There's no way else to say it. That is something that you cannot experience. You can't anywhere else. It is. Don't do it. You literally can die. But sometimes you make bad decisions. Used to snort a ball while drinking a 40 ounce of Canadian Club. Yeah. Yeah, you could drink a lot. A lot. I can drink, or can. Probably not now. I could at the time drink, 3/4 of like a 750 of whiskey. If I had cocaine to go with it, like you just keep drinking and keep drinking and keep drinking. It's crazy. It's crazy. You got your PhD in drugs like me. Thanks, Sunken Cathedral. Yeah. And please don't mistake like my mirth and my laughter as endorsement. It's really not. Like, look, I have really bad memories and I have some really fond memories, some really crazy shit that happened that had, there were times that I had a really good time. And so like when I remember those, like I smile about it because it's like that was really funny or that was really hot or that was really insane. Like you can't do anything about it. Like it happened. And so like I don't, no matter what the circumstances are, I don't believe in throwing away those experiences or trying to lock away memories. I think memories are the profit of experience, good or bad. And so like I try and like I hold on to those things. I know for some people like they need to get rid of them and I understand that. But for me, like I hold value in those things. Oh, you want to hear my dealer story? Okay. So this was emotional support Chad's name triggered me. Um there were several times where it was hard to get a hold of the dealer or whatever, and since he was far away, it was like you try and it's 2-hour drive, man. Like, so you don't want to like spend too much time. You don't want to waste a bunch of time. You want to, you want to, if you're like, typically if I was in town, if I was going to the Twin Cities and I didn't have the kids, right? Like, cause you don't do that. Like, that's a mess. If I didn't have the kids and I was in the Twin Cities, I would want to stop by and grab something because I don't want to take an extra trip. Right. But, like so, you try and get in contact with them, hard to get in contact with. And there's this period of time where he was never home. And, I had to meet him somewhere. It was, he comes out and gets in my car and just like, "Hey man, like this isn't your house." He's like, "Yeah, I know. You want to drive over there?" It's like, "Okay." So, we're driving and talking. He's like, "Fuck these bitches. I am just a fucking emotional support cock these days." It's like, oh, okay. I get it. I see what's going on. But yeah, so emotional support Chad made me think of that. And then I thought about it. I was like, yeah, I bet like, if you were a drug dealer, like people, women in particular would be coming up to you all the time. Well, hey, I don't have enough to pay for whatever. You could just fucking imagine the disaster that becomes if you give into that. Like I don't know. I don't know about his like experience or anything, but just like that was really fucking funny. And ran into that issue pretty frequently.